Shalom, Esther Githu. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. Adversaries of the United States are ramping up their effort to impact the outcome of the high-stakes presidential election. Malian officials say the capital Bamako is under control after insurgents attacked a military training school before dawn. And Bill Gates speaks to Africa 54 health correspondent Linord Moudou about the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's 2024 Goalkeepers report titled A Race to Nourish a Warming World. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. Florida law enforcement officials are set to launch a criminal investigation of the second apparent assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump, the Republican presidential nominee, according to Governor Ron DeSantis. Meantime, new questions are being raised about political violence in the United States as Democratic and Republican leaders call for more resources for the U.S. Secret Service. VOA's congressional correspondent Katherine Gibson reports.
President Joe Biden on Monday condemned what appeared to be a second assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump.
In America, we resolve our differences peacefully, the ballot box, not at the end of a gun.
The U.S. Secret Service had already come under congressional scrutiny for its handling of the July 13th assassination attempt on Trump. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson telling Fox News this second incident only increases the need for change.
I think there are some really patriotic, great people working in the Secret Service, but it's the leadership. We have no faith.
Trump told Fox News Digital on Monday the Democrats' rhetoric was to blame. But Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer condemned the apparent assassination attempt Monday.
There is no place in America for political violence of any kind.
The suspect, Ryan Ruth, is accused of hiding in the bushes with a rifle outside Trump's Florida golf course. The 58-year-old activist is a strong supporter of Ukraine in its fight against Russia. He spoke with Newsweek Romania in 2022 about the war.
This conflict is definitely black and white. This is about good versus evil.
Russia said Monday the assassination attempt was a warning to the United States.
Playing with fire has its consequences.
Law enforcement officials told reporters the layers of security added in the days after the first assassination attempt helped protect Trump on Sunday.
The system can work because the suspect didn't even get close to getting a round off, and we apprehended him and brought him to justice.
Ruth appeared in a Florida federal court Monday morning to answer weapons charges. Katherine Gibson, VOA News.
America's adversaries are ramping up their efforts to impact the outcome of the U.S. presidential election and down ballot races. VOA national security correspondent Jeff Seldin reports on the expanding array of sophisticated influence operations taking aim at U.S. voters.
In the U.S. presidential race, the push to win over voters is in full swing.
We will save our economy. We will rescue our middle class.
It's time to turn the page. Turn that
page. But the competition, according to U.S. officials, has been joined by Russia.
President Vladimir Putin's inner circle, including Sergei Kirillenko, directed Russian public relations companies to promote disinformation and state-sponsored narratives as part of a program to influence the 2024 U.S. presidential election.
Part of the scheme, according to the U.S. indictment, included mimicking dozens of news websites to influence how U.S. voters think about critical issues. The other part involved Russia's state-backed media outlet RT, charged with funneling almost $10 million to a U.S.-based media company.
To pay unwitting Americans millions of dollars to carry the Kremlin's message to influence the U.S. elections and undermine democracy.
Russia's denied the charges.
This is Russophobia. This is an attack on freedom of speech. This is discrimination. And this is the dirtiest games of the U.S. and the deep state for manipulation during the electoral cycle.
U.S. officials dismiss such denials as laughable. An unclassified intelligence assessment issued earlier this month calls Russia the most active foreign influence threat to the upcoming election, aiming to boost the chances of former President Donald Trump. And then there's Iran.
We have observed increasingly aggressive Iranian activity during this election cycle. That includes recently reported activities by Iran to compromise former President Trump's campaign and to avoid an election outcome that it regards as against its interests.
U.S. intelligence officials say China has also been running a small-scale social media campaign aimed at hurting candidates thought to be hostile to Beijing. But whether U.S. deterrence is working is questionable.
I don't think so far this has really broken through as a top issue that most American voters are following, but it's really important for voters to understand what's going on and how they may be pawns,
giving Americans lots to think about as they get ready to head to the polls. Jeff Selden, VOA News, Washington.
Malian officials say the capital Bamako is now under control after insurgents attacked a military training school and other areas before dawn, firing gunshots that reverberated around the city. The military government says some sensitive points of the capital came under attack, including the military school. It also says the army pushed back the terrorists responsible for the assault and urged civilians to go about their daily business. The school is in Faladi, a district on the southeastern outskirts of Bamako, near the main international airport. People heading to the mosque for morning prayers turned back as shots rang out.
Public relations companies to promote disinformation and state-sponsored narratives.
It's U.S.-Africa Business Week in New York. The event attracts African and U.S. leaders to enhance trade and investment. This gathering aims to unite African policymakers and business leaders in advancing the continent's development. With a focus on local initiatives, the goal is to empower U.S. and African entrepreneurs to garner international support for doing business across the U.S. and Africa. To learn more, VOA's Paul Ndiho interviewed Benga Omotayo, the executive director of the U.S.-Africa Trade and Business Network.
The U.S.-Africa Business Week, it's going to be an event that, in a significant move, is helping to continue to enhance export and import trade relations between the United States and Africa. During the United Nations General Assembly, to host world leaders and to host diplomats, to host captains of industries and the African diaspora. This platform is needed for so long, but we took the bull by the horn and we're bringing together the resources that Africa needs to meet up with those opportunities that are lying all over the continent. And so the U.S.-Africa Business Week is an event that facilitates trade and investment opportunity. It's actually the only B2B and B2G event that started in 2019.
From talking to people, some of those business people that you've had the privilege of interacting with, when you talk to them, what kind of investments are they looking for from the diaspora here, or even the Americans themselves? They talk about looking for opportunities in Africa, but in some cases, they don't know what opportunities are there. What are we talking about?
The opportunity is immense on both sides. I need to tell you that we're not just talking about goods here. We're also talking about human resources. What we are doing, our campaign is saying, and that's what the mayor of New York connects with us on, that we should be allowed to meet directly with the buyers and sell our resources, our commodities, without people being the middlemen and taking all the profits from us. So there is a lot of opportunities like that, and that's why we continue to educate people. For example, there is a push in Africa for non-oil exports. Virtually all the countries are campaigning for non-oil exports and adding value to products and goods. And they said that because they know that rather than sending raw materials, if they add value, they create jobs, right? They sell at higher price, and then they also earn in foreign exchange, right? But the challenge has been that there's no access to markets. They don't know how, and that's why we continue to educate in terms of how do you meet compliance, how do you package products to meet with Food and Drug Administration guidelines, how do you create a nutritional label? How do you get product to Walmart, Costco's, and places like that? You need to understand, what does the market want? What are the requirements? Who are the buyers? How do we reach them? How do we bring them together? So for me, it's a journey of passion. And that's why we focus on continuing to educate them, to empower them, so that their product can have places here and not just see it in the local African markets that, majorly is unregulated and the larger market don't patronize.
That was Benga Omotayo, the Executive Director of the U.S.-Africa Trade and Business Network, speaking to VOA's Paul Ndiho. A growing number of Tanzanians are falling victim to predatory loans made through mobile phones. When borrowers struggle to repay the loans, they face a variety of threats and penalties. Ronald Sonyo explains from Dodoma, Tanzania.
So you're welcome. This is Some Tanzanians are being convinced to take quick, no-hassle loans by eye-catching advertisements. But many are finding the promise of quick money carries unseen risks. Rashid Mwenda is one of them.
So once the rumors in the street, Rashid has taken a loan. So some other people, they went to my employee. So they tell him, this guy, we owe them, we need their money. So they chased me away because I'm a big debtor. So that's the problem. It's a little hard. It's about 5 years ago, till this moment, I didn't recover.
An overwhelming number of those caught in this trap are young people with limited income, struggling to make ends meet. Taxi driver Fakih Suberi says young people are easily lured by advertisements on their phones, promoting loans claiming to be quick to get and easy to pay off.
The majority of college students are victims of loans. Some of them have mortgage certificates because of loans, not just online. Now they come to the streets to take loans, and then they mortgage their school certificates and take loans.
The situation has drawn the attention of the government, which has intervened by suspending all online lending until further notice. Eric Makunde, who works for Uhuma Financial Services, a local loan company, explains.
It is true. Nowadays, some customers blame loan companies. Suspicion has increased and has become common because the number of loan companies is increasing, especially online lenders. Why is that? Because anybody who has a national ID number can receive loans without having conditions.
The Central Bank of Tanzania, which oversees small financial services, says it has begun taking measures to monitor loan providers and will revoke the licenses of those found to be violating the regulation.
The Bank of Tanzania, in collaboration with security agencies, is taking action against those issuing loans without a license. These individuals have been taken to court. This campaign is ongoing nationwide, and we want people to understand that through our coordinated efforts, we are committed to putting an end to this issue.
The Central Bank of Tanzania says the customers must be treated fairly and transparently under its new financial regulations. The bank is also reminding people to take the time to carefully review and understand any loan agreement before signing it and to make sure the lender has a valid license from the bank. For Ronald Sonyo, Dodoma, Tanzania, Vincent Makori, VOA News.
Germany's Commissioner for Migration Agreement suggests that his country could strike a deal with Rwanda to return failed asylum seekers to the African nation and use the facilities funded by the United Kingdom as part of an agreement that has since been abandoned by Britain's new Labour government. Germany is under pressure to tackle migration after a strong showing by the far right in state elections. Henry Ridgwell explains.
German police and border guards began making spot checks on people arriving across all the country's land borders Monday. Authorities say they are targeting suspected illegal migrants.
We want to keep the inconvenience for commuters and the transfer of goods to a minimum.
Germany is part of Europe's passport-free Schengen zone. Its members can introduce border checks if there is a serious threat to public policy or internal security. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said the move was necessary.
The number of those who come to Germany irregularly is too large.
Germany took in more than 1 million migrants in 2015 in the wake of the Arab Spring. It is also hosting more than 1 million Ukrainian refugees. The influx prompted a backlash from some voters who have turned to the far-right Alternative for Germany party, which scored a shock victory in recent regional elections. Many of Germany's neighbours have reacted with anger to the border checks.
I have no doubt that it is the internal political situation in Germany that is causing these steps to be implemented, and not our policy towards illegal immigration on our borders.
The border checks could undermine European unity in the long term, says analyst Raphael Bossong.
It could sort of aggravate a trend of mutual recriminations, rise of hard right and seriously Eurosceptic countries, and we don't know where we end up with this kind of trend.
Germany is also stepping up the return of failed asylum seekers. Will the crackdown impact immigration?
We're not dealing with, parcels or containers. We're dealing with people. And we're also dealing with a lot of different drivers of irregular migration. Yes, some may be susceptible to different incentives or different controls. Other may be less so. Looking at various wars and conflict in our European neighborhood, and these are not under our control.
Meanwhile, a government official recently said that Germany could seek to strike a deal with Rwanda to send asylum seekers there for processing. Britain abandoned a similar plan in July. Henry Ridgwell, VOA News.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, Bill Gates speaks to Africa 54 health correspondent Linord Moudou about a race to nourish a warming world. Stay tuned.
This week on Straight Talk Africa, do smart cities appear to be the new trend on the continent? They are promising to instigate growth and fuel innovation. But will they also create better living conditions for the rising middle class? Join me, Vincent Makori, for an in-depth discussion on the smart cities of Africa.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain, and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
In other news, a Pentagon official says the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Niger is now complete. Only a small number of military personnel assigned to guard the U.S. embassy remain, according to Pentagon spokesperson Sabrina Singh. Earlier this year, Niger's ruling junta ended an agreement that allowed U.S. troops to operate in the West African country. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has approved the immediate release of $8 million to support victims in flood-ravaged Maiduguri in Nigeria's Borno state. Severe flooding there last week killed dozens of people and displaced hundreds of thousands of others. And Zambia is dealing with its worst drought in 20 years, and businesses and households are going for days without electricity. Experts say the severe energy crisis could worsen Zambia's already fragile economy and lead to massive job losses. On average day, millions of people across the country are enduring up to 21 hours of power cuts, known as load shedding. It's time for a health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Linord Moudou with an exclusive interview. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Esther. More than 400 million children worldwide are not getting the nutrients they need to grow and thrive. According to the World Health Organization, nearly half of deaths among children under 5 are linked to undernutrition. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has released the 2024 Goalkeepers report titled A Race to Nourish a Warming World, which emphasizes the devastating burden of malnutrition and explores innovations that can help tackle the crisis. For more insight, I spoke with Bill Gates, the co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
When most people hear the word malnutrition, they'll think of situations where there's a food shortage, an extreme food shortage, like a famine. And although that does happen and it's tragic, that's not the main case for malnutrition. Malnutrition's happening where some kid doesn't get the right diet, gets some diarrheal episode, and their gut, including the microbiome part of their gut, is inflamed, and so they're not able to take advantage of the food. And so with our African scientists, we looked at twins where one twin would do well and one wouldn't, and then took samples to understand, okay, exactly what's going on and how do you stop that? And so it's partly micronutrients that are missing, things like iron, zinc, vitamin A. It's partly a lack of protein. And so we have a variety of ways of intervening, some of which are very inexpensive. Of course, a critical period for nutrition, before you're born, your mother's nutrition affects your entire life, how your brain and body develops. And so one of the exciting new interventions is giving pregnant mothers additional vitamins. We've always traditionally given them iron and folic acid, but by adding 4 others, which is only a few dollars per pregnancy, we see that the health of the mother and the health of the baby are substantially improved.
Some of these interventions, as you mentioned, are being implemented right now. It's a big problem on a big scale. What else is needed?
The challenges, whether it's malnutrition or malaria, they're not quite as visible to the entire world that should pitch in as it should be. And particularly right now, where the world's very focused on, we've got a war in Ukraine, we've got unrest in the Middle East, the focus on helping the continent where, there's the most young people and the most growth and therefore the most potential, I'd say that's quite a bit down from where we were before the pandemic. And we see that not just in understanding the health issues, but helping out with the debts and the debt payments that many African countries have, or even the aid levels. Aid to Africa is the lowest portion of aid that it's been in history. One topic people do pay attention to is climate change, and so there's an important connection in the report where we say, if you feel bad about climate change, what should you do? Well, these nutritional interventions are the highest impact thing to help the adaptation, to minimize the damage. And that area of climate adaptation doesn't get enough effort. And then figuring out, okay, within that, given that resources are so limited, what are the things that should be done to help these children?
How can we ensure that aid for malnutrition or nutrition in general, actually, does not continue to decline, and especially given the other global challenges like inflation, conflict, and economic disasters?
No, that is a big dilemma. And, partly voices in Africa, do need to be in the lead on talking about the debt challenges and what they hope to see there. What they hope to see in terms of getting aid back to where it was on a sort of pure moral basis. All of these things deserve to be funded. And, we're not talking about a high percentage of rich countries' budgets. It's less than 1%. The goal that was set was to be at 0.7% of the economy as aid. And unfortunately, even though many countries were there, they've cut back now. The UK is cut, even though they are very generous still. Germany's cut, despite they're very generous. France is cut, even though they're very generous. So the trends are troubling, and the lack of visibility is troubling. And the community who cares about this, including the great African leaders and innovators, we need to figure out how to get more attention and therefore prioritization.
Next time in part 2 of my conversation with Bill Gates, we delve into innovative solutions to address nutrition. That's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on X at Linord Moudou. Esther, back to you.
Great interview, Linord. Thank you very much. Be sure to watch Linord Moudou's informative health reports every Tuesday on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.